festivals, including WIF today, is stirring controversy. Russians at War follows a Russian army battalion in Ukraine. The filmmaker joins the Russian army as they cross eastern Ukraine. And what she shows in the film are soldiers disillusioned with why they are fighting and struggling to understand what the war will achieve. Ukrainians are upset by this work, including Carol Guimont, who lives in Windsor.
This whole film is based on Russian propaganda, and it's especially hard on those Ukrainian newcomers that have come to Windsor, who have lived through these atrocities, that have lost loved ones, have lost their homes, have had to flee Ukraine. And what this film essentially does is it makes the producer tries to get across the point that the Russian soldier is a victim, not the Ukrainian people that have entered into this war. They did not provoke this war. It was provoked by the Russians.
Cornelia Principe is a producer with the film. She also worked on Pray, the well-known documentary about sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, also at WIF. She's now here in our studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Lots to cover. I'm curious to know your reaction when you hear a clip like that and know there's going to be protests outside the film today.
Yeah, I guess, it's disappointing and a little frustrating because I really would like the protesters to come in and see the film. I'd be happy to give up my seat to a protester because I think they're basing it on a lot of assumptions that are actually not really true if you see the film. So
I want you to go to the motivation of this film because I think that might help clarify for some people what the film is actually about, because a lot of people, as you mentioned, have just seen the trailer. So give us a snapshot of why you decided to make this documentary.
I reached out to Anastasia, who's a Canadian Russian. I had met her the year before Russia invaded Ukraine, and started reading the newspaper and reading about all the protests in Russia that were against the war and how people were being imprisoned because they were protesting the war, and obviously reading about the horror that was going on inside Ukraine and to the Ukrainian people. And it's devastating to be watching a war in real time. And I could see that on the Russian side, no information was getting out and people were being arrested. The CBC got kicked out. Their accreditation was pulled. So you could see that there was very much another sort of iron curtain coming down. So that's when I reached out to Anastasia right at the beginning and said, do you want to start filming? Start filming with protesters. I want to hear about the anti-war movement inside Russia. So that's when it started. And it wasn't until about 8 months later that she happened to meet this soldier on a train while she was coming back from another shoot and started filming with him, and then ended up at the front with him. And so in the end, we made a film, an anti-war film, not with protesters, but with soldiers. And I think that that's the core of the story we tell. So when it's called Russian propaganda, it's hard to hear that because, in fact, what the film does is it flips the Russian propaganda. It exposes the Russian propaganda as well as turns it on its head, because I'm telling you, the Russian government would not be happy to have this film seen by Russians.
Yeah, and one of the reasons you say that is because in the film there's a disillusionment that soldiers don't even know what they're fighting for, why they're there. They're there because they were told to go there. Is that a general sentiment that you see throughout the film?
There's people's opinions change throughout the film. It depends on the particular soldier. Some of them are very disillusioned right from the beginning and realize that what they thought this war was is not what it is. And others come in thinking they're all patriotic, and by the end of it, they think this is crazy. Why are we here? What's the point of this? People are dying on both sides, and for what? It's not clear to them.
What's been Russia's response to the film?
We don't know yet. They've been very quiet.
Right, but how has Anastasia been treated?
Well, she's not in Russia, and she certainly should not go back to Russia. She's been told by many lawyers that you should not go back.
What is the fear?
Oh, she'd be arrested immediately. I mean, what she did was completely illegal. Yeah.
If you're a filmmaker, well, not if you're a filmmaker, you are a filmmaker. You're not a politician, is my point.
No.
And you set out to create an anti-war film, but this documentary is sparking violence globally. What is it like to be pulled into something like that as a filmmaker?
It's kind of shocking and disappointing, but at the same time, I understand the pain that the Ukrainian community is feeling. And so, in a way, I wish I could sort of, take them by the hand and sit them down to watch the film, because I have a feeling that it's not exactly what they think. At the same time, I understand it's a painful thing to watch. Absolutely, I can understand that. So maybe they don't want to. But to judge the film based on the trailer, I think that's it's doing a disservice to themselves and to the film, actually.
Do you feel almost silenced by, not silenced, but feel silent? Like you don't have a voice. You have your film, and normally that speaks for you. But
no, I know. I mean, I'd like to move it back to the film. It's interesting because I do think that certain words, once you put it out there, it's really hard to take back. And so using the word propaganda right away, it just shuts down discussion, right? It blocks out any nuance, and it suggests censorship. And obviously those are all things that we in a democratic society fight against. So I would hope that the film would spark discussion, debate, even anger, hurt, all that stuff. I mean, that is what documentary is supposed to do. It's supposed to make us think of things in a different way, make us cry, make us laugh, all that. So I in a way, I welcome the protesters outside, because I think that they of course they have the right to say what they think. I just wish they'd come watch it, and then they can protest after. So if you are out there, you're planning on protest. If there's a little part of you that wants to see the film, I happily give up my seat.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, it must be hard not to say, just watch the piece, just watch the film. And maybe that would answer some of the questions that they have. Yeah. Do you ever engage with the protesters and try and explain?
I actually haven't encountered, because when we were at TIFF, we screened it. We were there a couple of hours early on purpose, because there was a little concern that there would be violence, I guess, especially for Anastasia. Not as much for me, because she's been front and center, and it's because she's Russian. I think she's taking a lot of the heat. She's obviously the director. She was there. I did not go to Russia. I've never been to Russia. I'm not Russian. I'm not Ukrainian. It's not a world. I mean, I've always wanted to go to Russia, but now probably I'll never be able to go to Russia because of this film. I'm sure I'm on some list somewhere. So now I forgot what the question was.
No, I think you're sort of digesting all of this at the same time as trying to find the right way to articulate what people are missing. And so maybe it's bringing back to what people need to know before they take a stance on this documentary.
Yeah. I think if you can come to it with an open mind, and to me, I know it's the film is grounded obviously in this Russian invasion of Ukraine, but for a lot of people who see it, actually, it's really just about war, period. And so I've had friends who watch it and they relate to it as what's going on in Israel and in Gaza, other wars. They relate to it in a different way. It's about coming down to individuals as opposed to governments, as opposed to armies, as opposed to the military. It's about human beings. And in the end, soldiers are human beings. And they're dying on both sides of this war.
Mm-hmm. Cornelia, thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to finally meet you. Cornelia Principe is a producer of Russians at War. The documentary is at WIFF tonight. Let us